have a stand on this? Are you telling the cities to go into business for themselves more and more? Or are you encouraging your membership to try to expand their services?
Well, we have a situation. About 30% of the funeral homes in Texas are still in ambulance business. A lot of these, like the ambulance business, a lot of them are still in it because no one else in their area will provide the service, and they don't feel like just dropping the bundle. But personally, I hope the state legislative body will consider this, possibly, and in the future, I hope to see it as a municipal function or government function.
This trophy was given to the champion of the National All-Star Tournament recently completed in Chicago. It represents victory in perhaps the most prestigious bowling tournament of the year, and it was won by a Dallasite, Bobby Cooper, who is with us now. And Bobby, this I would naturally assume is the highlight of your bowling career so far.
Yes, sir, it sure is.
Could you explain the circumstances surrounding this particular event?
Well,
I think it represents victory at 30,000 bowlers, possibly, or potentially?
yes, well, it starts out in a state elimination. Everyone bowls a state elimination, and then you go to the national, and it started with a field of 192, and then ended up with 12 finalists after 30 games qualifying.
And you roll in Chicago how many games total?
78 games.
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot because I know that modesty is one of your virtues, but I want you to brag a little bit. Could you tell us exactly what you accomplished up there?
I broke the all-star record. I averaged 234 for 48 games in the record. The old record was held by Billy Hardwick of Louisville, Kentucky. He averaged 225 last year in Florida. And for the 78 games, I averaged 229.
Was there a lot of pressure throughout the entire week?
Well, yes, there was a lot of pressure. It was close, real close through the first 2 days. And actually, going into the last 8 games is when I felt like I was going to win it.
I know in the conversation we had just before we began the interview, you said that you had been close to a tournament champion before tournament championship and something happened. I wonder if you could tell us what that incident was.
Well, this winter in Milwaukee during the Millers Open, in about the 6th frame of the championship game, I split my pants. And in the end, it came out that it did cost me winning the championship.
That had to be just a little bit disconcerting.
Yes, it really was.
Bobby, this is the highlight, as we said, of your career. There had to be a beginning somewhere, and you're from Dallas. Where did you begin to get introduced to this game?
I started bowling in 1959 through a junior program at Zang's Bowl, and Mr. Lloyd Pullen, who owns Zang's Bowl, was highly instrumental in me getting started in bowling, and I'm really thankful to him.
Was this a hobby or something that you were really dedicated to throughout your high school career?
No, not. Yes, actually, in a way it was. When I was young, I had a leg disease, and I wasn't able to play contact sports or anything, so I got into bowling. And that's actually the reason I started bowling, was because of my youth.
Most of the programs that were approved by the state but not fully funded by the state are included in the minimum budget, including our kindergarten program, teacher aid program, planning time for teachers, additional programs in special education and vocational education. They are all represented in the minimum budget, but at a minimum or maintenance level. We, of course, if resources are available, would like to move beyond that.
The minimum budget then does allow for everything that the state legislature wants.
Yes, at a restricted level.
We were authorized by our city council last night to approach the national office in Washington and ask them for details as to how we could obtain a second census. We know we'll have to pay for it, but what with so many laws having one ground rule for cities of over 100,000 and another for cities under 100,000, it may well be worth the cost to us of a second census. So we're anticipating a report shortly from Washington as to what this would cost us, as to how soon it could be undertaken, as to method to be followed in such a count, and hopefully that it could be done prior to the official figures being released in the fall.
So then at the moment, you're not at all satisfied with the preliminary results as given you by the Census Bureau?
No, we're not content at all with the figures. Had we missed our estimates by 3,000 or 4,000 people, it would have been a different matter. But if we accept their figures, we've missed their estimates by some 14,000 people. And this is very difficult for us to accept.
In your opinion, the church is ready to make amends with cash, but not under pressure or on demand?
I think that's fair to say. I think the Methodist Church has a remarkable degree of ability to accept this kind of demand. I don't think we've gone as far as we ought to go, but we are well on the way, and it did not split the church as some people thought it would do in St. Louis.
Last fall, we of course changed the basis of assessment from 45 to 54% of fair market value. This provided the board with 25 cents additional latitude for taxation. I believe that the board is morally committed to stay within that 25 cents looking at the next 2 years. We could use it all this year, but I believe that we're morally committed not to spend the total 25 cents in this first year. It should accommodate our needs for 2 years anyway.
Mr. Berkeley, Dr. Estes wants a 47-cent raise in taxes. Do you think he'll ever be able to get this?
47 cents, I can't conceive of our approaching that, no. No, obviously, our limit is 25 cents on the tax rate. The 47 cents is not feasible nor practical.
What do you think would be the minimum that would be best for the Dallas Independent School District?
That's not my decision to make. That's a decision that the board is elected to make, and we'll, of course, know that answer on August the 12th when the board adopts the final budget.
Bishop, with the physical takeover of many of the country's churches by minority groups, was this possibly in your mind or in your thinking when the two councils merged?
Yes, it was, but in a very positive sense. A takeover of a building is a negative side of not being together. A merger of blacks and whites in a conference is a positive side of coming together as we ought to be in the church to do what we ought to be doing together.
Now, also, many of the churches have been called upon by minority groups to come up with what some people have called exorbitant cash payments for past abuses. Has the Methodist Church made provision for demands of this type, and if so, what are those provisions?
The Methodist Church has made no provisions for reparations. And personally, I cannot accept the concept of reparations in any radical sense. What the church has done is to respond to some long-standing needs, such as the black colleges, and to do it in a massive sense, which I think needs to be done.
Qualified voters of Lincoln Park, Texas went to the polls today. They were to determine the sale and on-premises consumption of alcoholic beverages in their mobile home community 6 miles east of Denton. Of 250 residents, only 28 are qualified voters, thus indicating slightly more than 5% of the residents will make that decision. Mayor Parks Bell, also one of only 2 major property owners, refused to be filmed, but he confirmed there would be only the one liquor store, and like the town, would be owned by himself and John B. Foster of Arlington, along with what he called other minority stockholders. He did decline to enumerate or identify these other stockholders. The beneficiaries of today's action appear to be residents of other Denton County communities, lakegoers, Parks Bell, John B. Foster, and other minority owners. This is Jim Mitchell, Channel 8 News on the Move in Lincoln Park, Texas.
Yes, in 1963, I introduced a bill to change the dates of the election back to the summer. I thought I was going to pass it, but it failed. I think it was good legislation then. It's good legislation now for a number of reasons, and I'm real pleased to note that at least 2 legislators are planning to introduce bills in the impending session to change either to late summer or early fall. And that will be good for a number of reasons. As the situation now exists, a candidate announces for office in January. He has the primary in May, in June. The general election in November, and conceivably one can campaign for 11 months. Public interest can't be sustained over that period of time, and the expenses of it's prohibitive.
Why was it originally changed back to May?
It was changed in 1959 to accommodate the then distinguished leader of the United States Senate, Senator Lyndon Johnson, who was running for the Democratic presidential nomination, or was planning to do so in 1960. And it was thought that he would have a better chance for the nomination if all the primaries were out of the way by the time he went to the national convention in July in Los Angeles.
Now, lest you be mistaken, remember there are maps and there are maps. This map shows land use inside the airport. The new $20,000 map should show safe building altitudes for as much as 10 miles around the airport when it's finished. $20,000 may seem a bit steep for a map, but airport planner Jack Downey says such maps are not uncommon.
No, this is a very common thing. As a matter of fact, all airports of any size at all have these types of maps. As a matter of fact, Love Field has one, Meacham has one, GSIA has one. It's just a matter of preparing the map for our work in aiding the cities roundabout and the governmental entities in this area in stipulating safe heights for their buildings.
Do you know, Jack, if there are any existing structures now that are going to be affected by this map?
No, I don't know. Well, I do know. I shouldn't say that. There are no existing structures, to my knowledge, that will be affected by this map. As a matter of fact, I have a very little feeling of concern that it will even limit the desired structure construction. All it does is just assure us that we don't have problems.
The new map will also answer many of the questions already asked by cities near the airport. Downey says the map should be ready about the end of this year. This is Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News on the Move in Arlington.
No, I don't think so. England, the defending champion, won their first game 1-0 over, I believe, Romania. And probably a few people were surprised by the Mexico-Russia result, a nothing tie, but it's going on form, I think.
Brazil, of course, is one of the strong favorites this year in the Mexican competition. They had to come from behind, but they won their game 4-1 the other night, and of course Pele put on quite a performance, which makes the England-Brazil match a real attraction for this Sunday.
Yes, right. As you know, we're going to have England-Brazil at the Bronco Bowl Playhouse Sunday at 1 p.m., and this is one of the most anticipated sports events around the world. This game has been scheduled for some months, and it ought to really be a great game with the defending champion England playing against Brazil with the most famous player in the world, Pele.
I know that you have followed soccer around the world. Have you ever had an opportunity to watch him play?
I've never seen Pele in person. I have seen him on television, and he is some marvelous athlete. I think he's only about 5'9", but when he controls that ball, it's like it's on a string on his foot. He moves that ball around, you think it's on a rubber yo-yo.
The main reason I was against the petition is the fact that there was arbitrarily an amount of land that went with the children to the Irving School District, and this arbitrary amount of land that was going with the children was not in agreement with Grand Prairie. And I feel that there ought to be an amicable agreement between the two school districts before we arbitrarily say that this amount of land should go with the children.
You think you'll be able to do that?
Well, I haven't been able to up to this point, but I feel like that both school superintendents and both boards have the interests of the children at heart in some way or another, that something may be worked out that would be acceptable to both school districts.
The parents are very concerned. They want their children to go to that school across the street. Do you think that those children will ever be able to go to that school across the street?
I feel like someday that this problem will be resolved.
Obviously, he approves of the overall goals of this project. He participated in it.
He was for a time, before his appointment as Chief Justice, the chairman of the special committee that headed up the project. But doubtless there are provisions contained within some of these standards which may raise constitutional questions. Those questions the Chief Justice and the Supreme Court will have to judge as they arise, and certainly he has not prejudged any of these matters.
President Nixon obviously felt that Chief Justice Burger was a conservative when he appointed him to the Supreme Court. Since he was instrumental in the formulation of these standards, do you feel they are maybe conservative or law and order in their wording?
I don't know whether the word conservative is an apt description. I pointed out at the very beginning that the standards attempt to achieve a degree of balance between the rights of the public and the rights of the individual, which must be protected. I think that the balance has been rather more on the defendant's side in recent years. If I were to make a guess, I would say that the balance will still be there, but that it may move a little bit in the direction of law enforcement.
Thank you. And so there you have it. Whether you're conservative, middle of the road, or liberal, whether you're law and order oriented or not, there is probably something in this set of new standards that you will like. There will probably be just as much that you won't like. Then there's the chance that you may not have the opportunity to like or dislike. After all, these rules are going to be studied at the convention in Austin later this month. Then it's a decision of whether or not they will be adopted on a trial basis in the state of Texas. Trial. That's the next word, because the first time these new standards, if adopted, are used, you can bet there will be a test case. And the outcome of that, only time will tell. This is Jim Mitchell, Channel 8 News on the Move.
Of course, we're speaking of one of the standards which has not yet been approved by the American Bar Association House of Delegates. There may be changes in the standards before they are approved. I can say that in general, and I believe within the bounds of the decisions of the Supreme Court, these standards would permit a carefully regulated use of electronic surveillance in law enforcement work.
We must be looking ahead, and we picked the airport that will be so important to Dallas, which is still years away, but we must be planning now the full utilization of that airport and its full import to the city of Dallas. That's one example, but there are others. As of today, have not even been in the chamber office yet. This has come about rather quickly, and I will withhold judgment until such time as I actually take over and go to work there and study, as has been pointed out, the programs and the staff of the chamber, and figure where we go from there, dependent upon the objectives that the chamber has set or will set for its work here in the city.
Well, if you looked at it open and shut politically, you'd say that a California company should win any new contract because the president's from California. But it isn't that simple. The Pentagon and the White House have pretty much kept out of the new contracts. The F-15 was decided not on politics, but on cost and technical merit. Now, with the B-1 contract, economics may become a factor because North American Rockwell, one of the two other competitors with General Dynamics, is dying. Even Boeing's in trouble. So it may be a split award, I think. Both two companies, one company may be prime, but the other company, say North American or whoever, may get more than half the work of subcontracting. It's the last big contract coming up in the military for aircraft for 5 or 6 or 7 years. And
you don't think General Dynamics is going to get a big bite of that?
Well, let me put it this way. I'd be surprised after all the controversy and the clamor if they did get it.
Do you feel frustrated now?
Yes, sure do. It's hard to raise the money to pay for a lawyer to take it into district court, but the board is willing to try to work something out also, so maybe we can get some help from them.
You're going to a great amount of expense, if no more than traveling downtown to see the board. Do you really think this is worth it for your children?
I certainly do.
Nothing's really been decided. The fact is that there is about 100 students that live across the street from a school that they can't go to, and there is 2 independent school districts, Irving and Grand Prairie, who can't see eye to eye on how to solve the problem. The county board has jumped in and decided to consciously make an effort to solve the problem. For Channel 8 News on the Move, this is Jess Brown in Dallas.